Welcome to Free Flow, the Health Tech Law and Policy podcast, where we explore developments in health policy and help you navigate legal and compliance issues that affect your business. I'm your host, Dan Orenstein. In today's episode, we're joined by Ron Bell, Chief Legal and Administrative Officer at Collective Health. With over 30 years in the legal field, including serving as General Counsel of Yahoo, as a licensing attorney at Apple, and as a litigator in private practice, Ron brings a blend of legal precision, strategic leadership, and operational insight. Ron writes frequently on LinkedIn, where he champions the idea that great legal work is always people work too, and an opportunity to drive business success. Hey, Ron, how are you? Welcome to Free Flow.
Thanks for having me, Dan. I'm great. Hope you're doing great too.
It's great to have you. I know both of us were dealing with some technical glitches this morning, but here we are, and I'm so pleased to have you. And I thought we might start with how we met, and it was through this Digital Health General Counsels group that started in San Francisco. I wasn't in San Francisco, but then it expanded nationally. Maybe you could just say a few words about how that got going and where it is now.
Yeah, well, San Francisco is, of course, a hotbed of tech in general and digital health tech included. And shortly before the pandemic, there were a group of maybe 5 of us that just happened to have offices in sort of the same area and would occasionally, like once a quarter, get together and have dinner or something like that, just to say how you doing, kind of get to know each other. And when the pandemic hit and I realized I was going to be literally, as I am today, working in my kitchen because there was no other space in the house in which to set up a desk for like the next couple of years, because I could immediately tell this is not going away anytime soon. I realized I needed, both as a relatively new, not a new general counsel, but new to the health tech space, and as somebody who was going to be going through that transition as all of us were, I wanted contact, I wanted communication, I wanted to build communities, I wanted to get to know my fellow CLOs. So I started reaching out to folks and saying, hey, would you like to get together for a Zoom like once or twice a month just to talk, not necessarily talk shop because we want to avoid any sort of legal entanglements or issues, but just to get to know each other, say hello. And I think it's a combination of like the idea and the timing because it just grew. And the group has always been free. So people get together, they talk online. We have an email list. We have a mentoring program. We do MCLEs with law firms for the general counsels and their team members. And all of that kind of appealed to people. And since it's free, people would sort of tell their friends. And so what started as originally a group of, 5 people grew to now over 80 general counsels in the health tech space.
It's an amazing group. That's how I got into was a friend, general counsel at Doximity, Jennifer, and it was still pretty small at that point and expanding nationally, and I've always been a little envious of San Francisco where you've got that nice little cluster of health technology companies. It seems like a nice community there, but there are also some other good spots around the country now. New York in particular, where I'm doing some work with clients, has a little hotbed there.
New York, Illinois, Texas, the usual predictable spaces. But what's great about the group, as you said, is like it's grown organically. Now represents a lot of companies, a lot of individuals.
And they're big and small too. You've got some publicly traded companies, a lot of startups, a lot in the middle growing.
Exactly. And we're open. I should say it's a podcast. We're open to, if anyone wants to join and they're legitimately in health tech and they're the GC of their company, drop me a line on LinkedIn and, happy to take a look at that and see if we can add you. I mean, it is totally free. And I think that's been one of the big honest virtues of it, because it's not something you have to think about as an investment or a trade-off against something else you do. It's just an investment you can make for yourself, and you can participate in things when it makes sense or not participate when it makes sense. But it's been really popular, and we've the MCLEs have been great. I mean, we've been able to really tailor them to what the members are interested in.
And for listeners or watchers, that is continuing legal education.
Absolutely.
Which the group organizes to sharpen the sword, stay on top of things.
Exactly.
I think another great feature of the group is the sharing of experiences and ideas and insights from like shared issues that members have dealt with. And one of them is the topic for today, which is, and it kind of comes through, talking to the client in the companies and you're realizing what they're thinking about. And the topic here is AI and how companies and company leaders and health tech companies are using AI for legal and compliance support themselves, and then what they're outsourcing. It changes the equation. It used to be just kind of like, what am I doing inside and what am I outsourcing to outside firms? So I know my clients are thinking about that a lot. And I wanted to get some of your thoughts, Ron, from you and distilled from the group on, what is AI good for?
Mm-hmm.
When should you use it yourself, and when should you have a pro use it, or when should you just use a pro, go to a lawyer?
Right. Is that the question? Because that's
the question. That's the question. We'll start with the first one.
I'll talk for the next 4 hours.
Should you even use AI?
Well,
I mean, just go
should
for
you
the
use
lawyer?
it? I mean, I don't think it's really a case of whether companies should be using AI, or certainly not whether lawyers should be using AI. I think that ship has sailed. It's kind of like, does the internet matter? Yes, no. Like, I mean, no one's going to say no today, right? Like 20 years ago, that was a debate. Like, how much could you rely on it? What was there?
Yes, that is done.
Yeah, that has gone. And now the question is how you're using it and what you're using it for. And I think it's interesting because health tech, you mentioned San Francisco and the confluence of tech companies, and now the confluence of so-called health tech companies. That's a broad concept, right? What gets in there. And I think it starts with what those companies are all about, right? Like in tech, it's all about disruption, right? It's this belief that the advancement of technology, whether you start with fire or the tire or the spreadsheet or AI, all of that is inherent human good and can be used for benefits. Yes, it can be used for bad things, but it's inherently a good thing. And so the technologists that are building these companies believe they should be able to do what they want, to build as fast as they can, to move fast and break things if need be, to get to the better benefits that they see at the end of the line. And healthcare is about clinically approved trials.
Right.
It's about slow, deliberative, repeatable, sustainable processes because you're dealing with people's lives, right? And you want to make sure that when you're dealing with their most sensitive information or very sensitive treatment, that you're acting in a responsible manner. And the union of those two, I think, of tech and healthcare is you have to move fast and you have to do it in a trustworthy way.
Right.
So you
and
have
a lot of companies have kind of gone into healthcare with that perspective, the move fast and break things. And then they've realized that, for one, that it is healthcare, and maybe their clients are asking them to move in a more deliberative manner. But also they run into healthcare regulation, which is significant. And then you face that question. Okay, how do I do everything I want to do and comply with the anti-kickback statute and HIPAA and so forth?
Exactly. And it starts with understanding like why those things are there. Like people made those regulations for a reason. It wasn't always to enshrine entrenched monopolies. It was because there was some issue that they were concerned about, some bias that might be introduced, for example, in the anti-kickback scenario that could compromise care or compromise the right answers. So what you have to be is both trusted and trustworthy. And the way that you get there is you ask the right questions, you wrestle with, and you settle upon the right answers that advance your strategy. And LLMs are part of that. AI is part of that. Machine language is part of that. Machine learning, rather, is part of that. They can help you understand the questions to ask. They can help you move faster. But the way that they're designed, they give you answers in seconds with utter and total confidence, but speed and certainty are not necessarily the same thing. So what you want to do is you want to be able to move quickly, but actually be safe, because the distance and the gap between that can cost you your reputation. It can cost you fines. It can cost you your job. It can cost you your company. So the
Yeah.
way to use AI is to ask better questions and to use the lawyers to help you make better decisions, because they're going to know your company, they're going to know your strategy, they're going to know your industry, they're going to know. You often have that saying, a good lawyer knows the law, a great lawyer knows the judge. I would say a great in-house counsel knows your business, knows what's at stake, knows your shareholders, knows your interest holders, and knows how to navigate all of that and help you make the right decisions in size, risk, and a responsible manner.
Right.
AI is great, right? It's great. It can summarize stuff faster than I can get a cup of coffee, right?
Mm-hmm.
It can spit out words, and often really good words, faster than I can add the cream to the coffee. But it can't really tell you what's personally at stake if things go wrong, right? For you personally. Right. So yeah. I think it should bring in the lawyer anywhere you need, where there's regulatory gray zone, or you need negotiation, or you need strategic advice or understanding.
It's that counseling aspect and knowing the business and knowing the nuances of enforcement and the law and the environment in which the company sits, and being able to communicate those judgments, formulate those judgments that AI isn't always great at. But to your point on what it is good at, the document summarization, creating templates, some basic research, it works really well in legal, because legal is language-based. These are large language models. It's document-based. So it was kind of perfectly made for legal. And at the same time, you've had a lag in productivity in legal services. I think a lot of data suggests, compared to other industries, because of some of that slowness and deliberateness, like going through word by word and documents and crafting a document. So I think it can accelerate those processes and bring more productivity, which can be great for companies if they're using it in the right way, right?
Right, 100%. And the key is, are you using it in the right way? Do you understand the limitations? Is your legal team being responsible and thoughtful about how it can use it, where it can use it, or is it over relying on whatever it spits out, right? Because that doesn't really make a lot of sense when you're dealing with an algorithm that's just basically spitting out words based on their probability and proximity to other words.
Right.
More often than not, that may get you the right answer. It may get you a pretty darn good answer, honestly, but it can't size the risk for you, and it can't help you interpret and think about how to present that risk. You were talking about the regulators. That's often to me, it's interesting. When I'm talking with someone in the business, it's not just about what is the business risk, or the legal risk. It's about who is the audience later for your explanation of this, and what do they expect of you, right? And what will you need to show them to convince them? Your good intentions are not necessarily enough. If the audience is lawyers, I know lawyers, right? You and I know lawyers. We know what lawyers think about. We know what lawyers care about. We know what lawyers are enforcing and spending time on right now. And that's context the business can really use that the AI
Ron,
may not have.
Let me shift the perspective a little bit. So let's say you're a CEO, COO of a startup health tech company.
Yeah.
And there's two possibilities. You have one you have a small in-house staff, and one you don't. You've relied on outside counsel. And you know that you can get things done with ChatGPT, the AI tools, for some of your basic legal documentation.
Yeah.
Highly regulated industry, say you're serving healthcare providers. What do you do as that executive? What are some thoughts on a path A being you have a small legal staff, path B being you actually don't?
Yeah, I don't think it's an either or. I think you should have a small legal staff, and you should use expect them to use all the tools at their disposal to get you the right answers. I mean, I know.
But what if you don't? What if you just aren't there yet? You haven't hired your first lawyer.
I know, but that's exactly where I was going to go. I know, that clients every day are picking up ChatGPT or some other LLM, and they're typing in legal questions, or they're asking it to draft something. You and I also know that lawyers often work from forms too, and to the extent this thing has been trained on a lot of really good forms, perhaps it will even spill out contracts that are enforceable, good to use, and most of them are not going to be litigated, maybe for a while.
Right.
But that's not the core of what lawyers do, right? It's not just spitting out words; it's contextualizing words. It's thinking about how they'll be used in a fight with the other side, in a dispute over whether you got what you needed, in a quarrel over whether you were paid properly or the deliverable met the standards. It's strategy and strategics that are important. So I think, look, I know that people are going to do it. They're going to be out there. They're going to do it. There are downsides because you don't necessarily have the expertise. It helps level the playing field, but you don't necessarily personally have the expertise to know whether the output is a good result or not. Right. It's just not that you're dumb.
Right.
You're just not trained in that for years.
Well, and then also from that regulatory, or other third-party perspective, looking retrospectively at what you did. There's, their process and rules are there, whether you like it or not. And so you may be in a position where you're explaining how you produced something or did something, right?
Exactly. And if you can't, you can't, right? Like that's a problem. And the other place I wouldn't use it is I wouldn't use it for litigation because, one of the benefits you get from working with an in-house counsel is that the questions that you're asking and the advice that you're getting, to the extent it's legal advice, is privileged, is protected from discovery. If you're just typing in, I have an employee who did this and thus and such, and I wanted this, and I'm mad about that, and how do I do it? The advice may or may not be good, but that thread is discoverable. This is not a licensed attorney that's producing a result to you. They don't necessarily know whether it's the right result in your jurisdiction. And the conversation may well be discoverable. And that could be to your advantage if it's like showing your lack of bias or something. But more often than not, it's not. And you're going to people tend to be very honest with their LLMs and kind of let everything out and because they think of it as an intimate personal fireside chat.
You can have a conversation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It feels like a conversation. It feels like you're getting actual advice. And the problem in that context is that the advice is not shielded from review by the other side. And maybe that's not
another
something you
really
want to do.
important process issue. And, people may get annoyed at the legal profession for these things, but, they're there and that's not going to be overturned anytime soon.
That's right.
Those types of structures. So speaking of conversations with your AI, and, people talk to their AIs about all kinds of things, not just legal things, believe it or not. But even when you're talking about legal things, it has a tendency to really validate what you're saying, which,
yes, it does.
Sometimes, you go to lawyers not to validate everything, but actually to point out some risks and maybe caution and maybe present a few options. So maybe you could give some thoughts and examples on that topic.
Yeah, I mean, look, I tell my clients like AI is like that friend that you ask, hey, does this haircut look good? And always says yes, right? Like even if it's a terrible haircut, like it's wonderful for your morale. It's not always great for accuracy because it's trained to agree with you. I mean, and that's fundamentally that's how it works. It looks at the question that you're asking and then it tries to predict what the
first it says, amazing question.
Right,
I can't believe you thought of that question.
Brilliant, right? And then it tries to finish your sentences, right, and finish the thoughts the way you would want them to be finished. So it is inherently validating. And then you couple that with a lot of the LLM, certainly ChatGPT, you can select this was a good answer or a bad answer, right? And that's used, again, to sort of reinforce what in the training models, what is a good answer? What is a bad answer? The answers that validate what you want to hear tend to be ones that are rated as a good answer. And they have internal people who are training them too and trying to tune them up. But there's a bias, both business imperative, because we want you to keep using it, and one that says to you every day, like, Ornstein, where did you go to law school? Because you don't know anything, right? That's not going to be the LLM you're probably going to use. It's not just annoying, though, that it validates. Sometimes it's actually dangerous, right? Because if you're drafting, like, say, patient consent language and AI validates the phrasing and it all sounds HIPAA compliant, but it's not, then you have a problem later, right? So you actually do what you actually do need to think about the problem of validating your bias at scale. And one of the benefits you were saying that lawyers have is, well, you can prompt an AI to be critical of what you say, and it can be pretty effective at that. Right. Lawyers, by and large, by training, don't echo. Like, that's not what we're what we're great at. We're good at asking questions. We're good at clarifying things. We're good at arguing on behalf of your future self with your present self. How are you going to feel in 3 years if this comes up and if we haven't resolved it in this way? Is this really a risk that you're comfortable taking right now?
Yes. Yeah.
And so to me, like the AI is wonderful. Validation like feels good and it can be helpful for productivity, but co-creation, accountability, and experience are what help you build a company. Like AI can help you build your ego and it can also help you build a company, but you want to pair it with somebody who can look over its work and say, I would go in a different direction and here's why.
And it's kind of goes to the point of other areas of AI use as well, where you want, like medical judgment, for example, where you want a human in the loop, right?
Absolutely.
So would you say that you want a lawyer in the loop if you're a highly regulated health tech company and you're
yes, probably
using an AI for...
But, there will be, Dan, this will be a
documents and
continuum.
advice.
This will be a continuum because as the
Right.
AIs get better, right, there are going to be places where people are going to say, well, why can't they, prescribe basic medications? Like this is going to happen like in the next 25 years or something,
Yes.
right? Maybe less than that. Why can't they?
And
right?
AI will get better too. as
AI
well.
will get better. And so there will be some percentage of the low hanging fruit and there are reasons that it might be good if it gets better, right? Because there aren't enough primary care physicians. There aren't enough people. People can only do so much in so much time. AI can work 24/7. There's some benefits we may see from that. But as with everything in technology, like the internet brought us amazing like content and services and the ability to shop for anything, anytime, anywhere, and have it delivered to your door in an hour. And it also made it possible for unfortunate crimes to be committed and child pornography to be circulated and all of that.
Sure.
It's not the technology in itself that is necessarily the problem. It's how we use it. And so it really comes down to like, are we being thoughtful? Are we using people for the right things? Are we using technology for the right things? And do we understand the limitations of both?
Yeah. And I would say that engaging legal and compliance services is not easy. And maybe some of it will be made easier by some of the tools as well. Like the fundamental question, take AI out of the equation. When do I use a lawyer?
Mm-hmm.
They're expensive. They can sometimes be hard to communicate with in plain English, et cetera, et cetera. So when facing this question of how do I use AI, a company leader or executive may also be facing the question of how do I use my lawyer or, in-house or outside counsel. So, which then, brings you to the confluence of those two things. So do you have some thoughts on like, how should an executive in a company think about how to use their lawyer and their lawyer's use of AI?
Yeah.
And does it affect it at all? Or are we just back to, some guidelines on when and how to use a lawyer?
Let's start with lawyers, right? Like lawyers are really good when you're building something in a highly regulated industry that's going to be very complicated, expensive, or consequential to refactor or do the wrong way. Right? That's like the fundamental place, the heavy regulations, the HIPAA compliance and building your products that way, the corporate practice of medicine, the anti-kickback statutes, things where like hitting the reset button is very difficult, maybe very expensive, maybe very hard, right? For all of those reasons. Great places to use a lawyer. Drafting contracts that are complicated, certainly anything that requires a level of strategery or thinking through how different parts of your business interrelate, like it's easy to draft a contract that says, I have data rights or I will get data rights. They may not be the right data rights for what your business is planning to do. And right, somebody's got to argue that to the other side and have that conversation. So I think it's about what you want to do is you want to use your lawyers for places where they can add strategic advantage and help you build for the long term, right? That's really where your benefit is. And that also goes to, you were asking like, how do you use inside versus outside? Like, ultimately, because lawyers are expensive, I think what you want to do is think about, first of all, the three things that lawyers do at a business, right? One of them is aspirational. It's helping you do your contracts. It's helping you build your business. It's helping you do your revenue-bearing partnerships. It's growth stuff. Then there's the maintenance piece. It's like, that's not sexy, and a lot of people outsource a lot of it. It's keeping the corporate licenses in place, making sure your certifications are in place, making sure you have, the right people in the right jobs that have the right credentials that have been validated, and so on and so forth. And then there is the defensive piece, the litigation, right? So what you do is you take a step back and you say, what's the 80% that if I could bring it in-house would, as a general counsel is the question you ask, what's the 80% if I could bring it in-house would solve most of my problems? And then for things that are important but maybe don't fit that bucket, like real estate, right? Like we're looking at new real estate right now. It's important. Well, millions of dollars will be involved in it, right? It's important to get it right. But we don't need a dedicated real estate lawyer on our team because our business just doesn't do real estate transactions as often as, say, McDonald's does, which is every freaking day, right? Like, so I would expect they would have dedicated experts and franchising law experts and so on. For a company like Collective Health, real estate is something I can outsource, should outsource, and it makes sense for me to outsource it. For financing, there's some percentage of that can be done in-house, but you may want the advantage of an outside firm that has that experience and scale and familiarity, with the conventions to help drive it.
Now, in terms of use of your lawyer's use of AI, as you said, everyone is using AI. The ship has sailed. It's a tool that all industries are using. Should you be concerned about the fact that your lawyers are using it or not using it? And should you be demanding maybe some efficiencies from their work because of the availability of those tools?
Well, efficiency is always that difficult word, right? Because as in-house counsel, I think we hear that word even well before AI. It's like what ROI are you generating for the business? It's like the question the lawyers always get. And they always feel like they're working with not enough resources. But I would say should your lawyers be using AI? Sure, right? If your lawyers aren't using the best tools available, including AI, to serve your business, you're probably overpaying for their time or not getting as much benefit out of them as you can, right? If they're using it blindly, if they don't know what they're doing and they're just trusting whatever answer comes out of it, you don't really need lawyers. You could probably do that yourself. So I think it's really a question of how are they using it and are they using it effectively? That's what's becoming table stakes to me. And in a health tech where AI speeds up work and lawyers can help steer things in the right direction and trust is everything, the steering really matters, right? So I think you want to ask your lawyers, how are you using AI? How are you validating the answers that you're getting? How are you protecting privilege? And what is that freeing you up now to spend your time on other things? It may not be as much though as people think, because as every AI company would tell you, right, especially OpenAI has put out we're not lawyers, you can't rely on this, blah, 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 blah. It's not, not a license, blah, blah, blah. It's all in the terms of service. Anyone can read it. The assumption is that there should be a lawyer who reads legal output. And if there's a lawyer who reads legal output, it's like having an intern that goes off and does a lot of work. You're not quite sure of the quality. You think it's probably pretty good, but you're looking for someone to read it. That's still somebody reading it. So it's not like there's no work involved and I just press send, right? So there are efficiencies to be gained. It's not 100% efficiency, but let's say it's just 10 to 15% efficiency. Great. And then what else are they doing? What are they doing with their time after that? What capacity do they have now? What confidence do they have now that they've used the AI? And how are they putting that back into the business to drive
That's a great question. Yeah. And you may, if you have an in-house staff, you may expect them to work on some other initiatives or go deeper on something or participate in a new product design where they might not have had the capacity to do that earlier, right?
Exactly. Or go less deep in something. Honestly, it can be the opposite. You guys are spending all this time on our NDAs. We can get 99% of the way there with the AI. Do we really need you to spend time on the AI, right? On the
Which
NDAs.
Frees you up for something else.
It frees you for something higher value, to be in the room, to ask the questions, to help shape the strategy for the future. And I think that's where the value is.
Yeah, that's great. So let's get into a topic that's been in the media a lot, which is some problems with AI tools, like algorithmic bias, being trained on the wrong materials, hallucinations, and the use of those in legal and in health tech companies. Do you have any thoughts on how you, as in-house counsel, general counsel, think about that?
I think every company is thinking about this right now, and every company is struggling with what it means and how to do it, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're licensing an AI from a third party, you can ask lots of questions about how do you avoid bias and so on and so forth, but you're not necessarily going to have all the right answers. I
Right.
think part of it is really demonstrating right now in the period where we have the questions but not the answers. I think part of it is making sure that you have asked and documented that you have asked the right questions, right? Like, what is
Right.
happening with this data I'm putting in there? Is it used to improve your services? How do I know that personal information isn't being used in a way that could be output when Dan Ornstein comes and types something in, like, about Collective Health, right, which is my employer, right? Like, have we thought that stuff through? How do we make sure that the AI is producing results that are as good as a person or better than a person? Because if it isn't doing either of those, what's the advantage, right? I'm reminded there's a Homer Simpsons episode or a Simpsons episode where Homer, for a variety of reasons, adopts the name Max Power. And there's this point in the episode where he says, there's the right way, the wrong way, and the Max Power way. And I think it's Lisa asks, what's the Max Power way? And he goes, it's the wrong way, but faster, and like, I mean, AI can give you the right way, but faster. Let's be clear. Or it can give you the wrong way, but faster. And that's probably true of people too. But like, if you're doing it at scale and you're sort of turning this loose on the world and people are relying on the output and relying on the decisions, you want to make sure that you have thought about those things in a structured way. Like you have a group of people, technologists, lawyers, et cetera, who meets regularly, who talks about these issues, who thinks about it, who thinks about the company's philosophy, and who gets comfortable with the company's answers, what it would be if someone were to ask, well, how does it use this? And, what is done with my data?
How careful do companies need to be about the tools that they're onboarding, both in legal and outside of legal?
You can always be over index, right? But I think right now, particularly in healthcare, where people's sensitive data is involved and the regulations are just emerging, and they're emerging at a rapid rate. I think there's like 250 AI bills emerging in all the states, right? Like it's just crazy. The questions are easy enough to figure out. There have been AI frameworks for a long time. Do you document it? Do you have bias? Are you acting ethically? Is it giving actual answers? How do you train it? How do you validate it? Like all those questions have been around for a while. To come back to your question, I think you need to be pretty careful because there's a lot of people who are promising a lot of things right now, and there isn't a lot to back it up, right? I see statistics all the time, like lawyers, AI will make your lawyer X% more efficient, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where does that come from? Right? It's anecdotal, maybe somebody actually did some tests somewhere, but like, is that true at scale? Is it true at scale across all the work, right? Like what's happening there? And I think we are going to see, as we have in the internet space, we'll see consolidation too. So the company you're working with today may not be the company you're working with tomorrow. So what's your guarantee that the data I'm providing today will be used tomorrow in the way in which I expect it, right? That was one of the questions.
And that may be an area where your lawyer could help. You have
your lawyer can help you think
about
and
AI
not just your lawyer.
right?
Let's be clear. It's not just us. It's your lawyers, your technologists, your others, right? Working together and thinking about like, what are the downstream consequences? That was one of the questions when 23andMe went through some of the struggles that they had. There was a lot of attention on like, what's going to happen with all that data, because people were comfortable with 23andMe at the time that they gave the data, but maybe in retrospect, as the company was struggling and figuring out its next path, and there might be acquirers and so on, where is that going later, right?
Right.
And that is a risk for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So anything else that you think company leaders in health technology should be thinking about on this topic?
Company leaders in technology, and this is true, it's not just in technology, it's just in general, tend to struggle, as you said, like, what is the role of legal? Like, what do I really need lawyers? I don't really want lawyers or legal advice. I just want to move the business forward. I understand that these people have to help me in some way. I got to do this. So I think they struggle with like, what is the right resourcing, right? How many lawyers do I need? Like, can I replace them with AI and so on and so forth? I think one of the key challenges right now for legal teams is they're being asked to do more with less, right? As you said, here's AI, go forth and conquer. But there's also 250 new, state AI bills, and that's just AI bills, right? Like it's like a regular tsunami, if I can use the term, of like things, of laws that, will potentially be liability for you later. And you need to be able to move quickly and nimbly. And people worry that if they over-resource the legal team, all they're going to do is run around and find problems and slow everything down. Mm-hmm. And that's a risk. I mean, it is a risk. Let's just be honest. If you hire the wrong people and all they can see is a problem everywhere they look and they scare everybody, then you're never going to move forward. And that's a real problem.
That is a problem. Again, I would think that if you hire the right person.
Exactly.
Then they would be able to leverage AI, as we were discussing earlier, to free themselves up to deal with some of these bigger picture issues, or just have time to address some of those governance challenges and new regulations, and spend more time advising.
100%. It's a people problem, not necessarily a functional problem, right? But if you under resource, you've got one person sort of like doing everything, or two people, and you've really under indexed, you actually have created a bigger headwind for your business, I think, because it's like having the illusion of safety without the safeguards. So it's like saying to somebody, I want you to drive this passenger van safely down the highway, but I'm going to cover your eyes periodically, and we're going to drive into the sun, and someone's periodically going to lower your seat backwards, right? And I'm also going to ask you to serve all the passengers lunch while this is going on. All that's going to happen is they're going to be running around, they're going to be crazed. It's not going to be a very safe drive. That's an exaggeration, of course. But legal touches so many parts of the business. It touches marketing. It touches the revenue generating contracts. It touches product, right? It touches every single component of the business. If it is moving slowly or incapably because you haven't resourced it appropriate to the task you need it to do, working with the right mindset, as you said, it stops everything cold. It either is going to, be a holdup on the I can't get to your contract until next week because I'm overloaded, or people are going to manage their schedules and not help you manage and think through how to take calculated risks in a way that you really may need, and may be under the illusion that you are getting.
And AI is not a silver bullet for that, I think. It's it's having the right leader in there to run the department or to manage outside counsel effectively, right? Because you could throw all the state-of-the-art AI tools into the legal department, and you could still have that under-resourcing or delay problem if it's not managed effectively.
Exactly. And it's also, just as we said at the beginning, it's about using things for the right function. I'm a great fan of AI. I hope that comes through. Like, I think it has a lot of benefits and can be a real asset to professionals and to companies. I'm a great fan of spreadsheets, right? Spreadsheets can calculate things a lot faster than I can and more accurately and let you do what if. But I wouldn't just say, spreadsheet, take the wheel and decide my company strategy, right? Like, no tool is going to do that. Use all the tools at your disposal, use them wisely, use them thoughtfully, use them in conjunction with the people who have the expertise to help use them best. But at the end of the day, for better or for worse, it's you who has to make the calls, and you want the best input and the best people at your side and the best tools at your disposal to make those calls. But you're going to have to make them.
Terrific. I think that's a good place to conclude. Ron, I really appreciate your thoughts on this topic. You've done some deep thinking in all these areas, and thank you for sharing that.
Thanks for having me, Dan. It's been great.
Okay, terrific. And that concludes our episode of Free Flow. Thank you for joining us today. For more information, please visit our website at orensteinlegal.com and navigate to the podcast page. Remember to subscribe or follow Free Flow on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube so you never miss an episode or update. This podcast is for informational purposes only, is not legal advice, and does not create an attorney-client relationship. Thank you for listening.